Nonprofit and philanthropic leaders devote their lives to the service of others, but sometimes they need a little help. Kristine Michie has been deep in the work and the play of helping changemakers grow their impact for decades. So whether you're ladling soup at a local shelter or attending a UN peace conference, you need to find the balance between the heavy work and a light touch so you don't burn out. And Kristine believes play is at the center of that. Welcome to the PlayFull Podcast, bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world.
Everybody, hi, welcome back to the PlayFull Podcast. We are bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world. And today I'm so thrilled to have with me Chip Conley, who has, there's many affiliations that I could list. I'm going to start with the founder of the world's first Midlife Wisdom School. And hopefully those of you who haven't heard that phrasing before will stick around to find out what we mean by that. Chip, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. This is, you were on my podcast. Now I'm on yours. So I love that.
Yeah, folks, Chip has a podcast called Midlife Chrysalis. It comes out weekly, and I got to be on it recently with a colleague and actually a former PlayFull Podcast guest, JD Schramm. He and I are co-facilitating a workshop in September, the 10th to the 13th, at the Modern Elder Academy. So let's not keep them in suspense any longer.
Yeah.
Tell folks about what is a Midlife Wisdom School and why did you start one?
Well, long story short is I've always enjoyed fun. And I called my boutique hotel company that I started in my mid-20s Joie de Vivre, meaning, joy of life. And but I wasn't feeling a lot of joy of life in my late 40s and ended up selling the company at age 50. And I was like, who the hell am I now? And I was sort of burned out. And in my 50s, I really flourished after a really rough late 40s. And I started to ask the question, basically, long story short, is I was asked by the founders of Airbnb 14 years ago to come in and be their modern elder, which at first I was like, well, to hell with you. You're making fun of my age. But they were millennials and I was a boomer. And
who are you calling modern elder?
Yeah, exactly. But then they said, Chip, a modern elder is someone who's as curious as they are wise. And I liked that. And long story short is I spent 7.5 years helping take that little tech company and the three founders as their mentor to turn it into the world's most valuable hospitality company. And long story short, I got to a place where I really said, like, why is it that we as a society have done such a poor job of helping people in their middle of their life, 40s, 50s, 60s in particular, understand what they've learned along the way, the wisdom, and then how can they apply it out there in the world? And that's, whether it's through social justice or whether that's as an entrepreneur or as a mentor. And that's really what MEA is all about is, we have 9,000 graduates from 60 countries and 56 regional chapters and 2 campuses, one here in Santa Fe where you'll be, Kristine, and then another one in Baja on the beach, an hour north of Cabo San Lucas in Mexico.
Great. And let me just fill in some of the blanks for folks. These are 3 to 6 day, but sometimes even kind of more spend a sabbatical period there. You can organize a one-on-one opportunity to be down there, other kinds of gatherings, but basically you can sign up for, folks can picture this, retreat kind of setting with curriculum, some of it that is MEA specific that you all deliver again and again because of your model, and then guest faculty like I'm going to get to come in and deliver some additional messaging. Please do check it out, folks, meawisdom.com.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, Chip, it's really relevant. The audience that listens to the PlayFull Podcast, for the most part, are change makers, people working full time in the social justice, social good sector. They may be philanthropists, they may be nonprofit leaders, and then people kind of all in up and down the kind of org chart within social justice and social change work. At this moment, and this is probably true, this is kind of relative to like the silver tsunami that's happening kind of broadly, but there's a lot of nonprofit leaders who've been in their role, and I'm an example. If I was on staff somewhere, I'd be an example of somebody who was probably starting to think about, have I been here long enough? Is it time for me to make a change? I have my own company, so I'm just having these conversations with myself about how to continue to add value. But there's a lot of turnover happening in nonprofit and philanthropic leadership with people in their 60s who started doing this work decades ago. Anything you'd advise as people face that moment? And it might be hard to let go a little bit too, because this is work of the heart.
Yeah. Someone recently said, a woman named Bonnie Wan, who's remarkable, and she's the chief brand strategist for Goodby Silverstein, and they're an ad firm that actually created the Got
Mhm.
Milk. Remember the Got Milk ads and all that?
Yes.
So she says that MEA and what we do here and what the world needs is a community of wise beginners. And so I would say to those folks who've been doing the same thing for a long time, you have some wisdom, but how could you actually go out and be a beginner at the same time? Again, modern elder, curious and wise. It's these juxtapositions in life where you're not just like betting on one thing. You are both secular and spiritual. You are both introverted and extroverted. And you are both for-profit minded and non-profit minded. So I think the idea of how could you have a beginner's mind such that whether it's learning how to juggle or doing karaoke or learning how to surf at our MEA Baja campus or here in Santa Fe, going for a horseback ride for the first time in 30 years, getting used to the idea of trying something new and being curious are two of the 10 most correlated variables for people who are healthy and happy later in life. And it's sort of the opposite of what we think of as the curmudgeon, the cranky curmudgeon who's like, they're sort of they're angry about life, and it's partly because they're sort of bored, and they've stopped growing and learning. So that's the key thing. I just think, however you want to do it, we sort of dedicate ourselves to this is to help people learn how to become a beginner again.
Okay, what came to mind was, and you and I are the same age roughly, so or maybe even very close. Steve Martin had a bit back in the day, and he was doing this bit about how he had a younger girlfriend, and they would go out, and she was like, "Hey, let's go camping," and she was like always suggesting all these new things, and he said, "Sorry, we're closed," because he was like, "I'm not doing new things," and that was like, and when you just said that, like, that's a choice, right? That's a choice to be stuck and comfortable, quote unquote, or unstuck and uncomfortable.
Yeah, and you could be unstuck and comfortable too. I mean, it's learning how to find comfort in uncertainty and have a sense of humor. So one of my favorite ways of describing life is the following. When I was in 6th grade, I went to ballroom dance class. And Mrs. Call's ballroom dance class. And so as a boy, I learned how to actually lead the girls, and the girls were going backwards in heels. The way I sort of see our lives is that the first half of our life, the ego is the boy leading the dance, and the soul is going backwards in heels. And after about age 50, it's supposed to be the exact opposite. The primary operating system of your life is supposed to be your soul, and your soul is supposed to be leading the dance, and the ego has to learn how to go backwards in heels. So the ego better have a sense of humor. And so one of the things we talk about at MEA is type 2 fun. And type 2 fun is the idea that when you're doing it, or that even the prospect of doing it may scare you a little bit, or you might like get self-judgmental, self-critical. While you're doing it, it may feel uncomfortable. But afterwards, you have not just a sense of accomplishment, but you're just sort of laughing at yourself because you were your own worst obstacle. And learning how to go backwards in heels, have your ego go backwards in heels, especially for men. It's such a really valuable, almost a visual metaphor you can think of and say, like, how could you laugh at yourself? And there's this thing called the growth mindset. And having a growth mindset means that you're focusing on how do you get better at things, how do you grow, as opposed to how do you optimize, which is a fixed mindset. And learning how to have a growth mindset is a really important characteristic of getting older, and frankly, learning how to try new things.
Yeah, I love it. I just recently, after hearing many of the admonitions about older women needing to do weight-bearing exercise and get into the gym and lift weights, I've been active my whole life, but never ever had a membership in a gym, never ever worked out inside a gym. And about a month and a half ago, I started. And so now I'm like, I was at the Hilton, in a gym when I was on the road, and I don't know how the machines work. And so I was, I could either be embarrassed and just kind of do it wrong or do something I know how to do, or I could ask someone else, or I could go. And there was actually a staff person there, and I said, can you show me how to use this machine? And it's fun to be 62 and learning a new thing. It really is fun.
Yeah.
And I know my husband actually went to an MEA course, and kook phase was a phrase that was also used with his.
He was at Stacy Peralta. So he was with a famous filmmaker and the kooks. To be a surfer, if you're like a new surfer out, on the waves with the veterans, you're sort of a kook if you're new, or if you're somebody who's willing to try something new and has been doing it for a while. So how can you be a kook?
Yeah, I love that, and it's safe to be that. So if you would tell folks who you shared a little bit before about joie de vivre and then working with Airbnb. It seems that from what I'm understanding, boutique hotel as a concept hasn't been around forever, and you were a part of, or maybe the person who had first this idea. And in this moment, in kind of the society and social setting, social justice, there's a lot of problems that seem they are resistant to the solutions we've had before. And if we feel like, to use a metaphor, if we're a cook in the kitchen to create something new and we're only allowing ourselves the ingredients that are already there, we may be limited. Now, we can probably mix things up a little bit, but how did you so many times imagine something that didn't exist and create it? And what characteristics of those would you say to nurture so you could be that kind of thinker and solver?
Well, sometimes I'll speak for myself second, but I'll speak broadly first. Sometimes it's like you can think of a business and then you say that's successful, or something in the world that's successful and people like. And then you say, we are the Airbnb of fill in the blank, or we are the Uber of fill in the blank, or we are the Ralph Lauren of fill in the blank. So sometimes it's like looking at something and then applying it elsewhere. When I was in the boutique hotel business, I was not the first, but I was one of the first. Ian Schrager, Bill Kimpton, and me. I was the youngest. I was mid-20s, and they were older. The thing that I had in my mind was, though Ian Schrager wanted to do cool hipster hotels that were expensive. Bill Kimpton was 20 years older than me, and he wanted to do sort of business class boutique hotels. I had the point of view of like, who's going to do the boutique motels? How can you do boutique? And I sort of had a little bit of a premise, which was, how do you take style to the masses? And because it's like, I wanted to, I was 25, 26 years old. So my first, not all of them, but most of my first boutique hotels were motels that I was converting. And they were very successful, because quite frankly, doing the renovation of a motel is not like doing it's usually a 2-story or a 3-story building. It's not like a 10-story building where you have to redo the elevators and so I got really successful because it was all about the sexiness, the sizzle of, good interior design, as opposed to like major infrastructure. But that came from me saying to some people early on, we're going to be the Rolling Stone of boutique hotels. And that was my first hotel, the Phoenix in San Francisco, was this rock and roll hotel. And so I used magazines as the touchstone for the hotels I created. So we had 52 boutique hotels ultimately, and every single one of them had a different magazine that defined the personality or the soul of the hotel. Yes. Similarly, I used the Gap. I said, and back then the Gap was a very popular brand, and back in the late 80s. And I was like, who could be the Gap of boutique hotels? Meaning stylish, affordable, and clean enough. And that was sort of ultimately created at one point a hotel called the Good Hotel. And it was never going to be a great hotel. It was just a good hotel. but it had, but there was back then, and so the social justice warriors here will remember this. There was a magazine called Good Magazine, and the premise behind Good Magazine was, how do you do good in the world? So this was a hotel that was like never going to be too expensive or too over the top like luxury. So it was affordable, but it was also oriented toward doing things in the community. So it was good in two different ways: good price, good in the community. And so each of the hotels had that kind of flavor. And yeah, and when I was, going to Airbnb after that, home sharing we sort of prided ourselves on home sharing. And I was like, yeah, home sharing's great. And I think that's a good way to think of it. But I think there's something more that we're doing here, and that we're really helping people to feel like they're living like a local, and helping people to feel a deep sense of connection with the place in which they're going, and maybe with their host. And so yeah, so it was the premise was, how do you create a product that would help you belong anywhere? Now, Hilton will never do that. Expedia will never do that, but Airbnb could help you belong anywhere. So I think if you could actually try to get whatever it is that you're doing that's going to be your differentiator, and get it down to two words. For me, with Joie de Vivre, it was identity refreshment. We were not a boutique hotelier. Our goal was to refresh your identity by you coming and staying with us, and the personality or identity was based upon the magazine. So yeah, and then I took it to boutique campgrounds. Like, okay, we have boutique hotels. What about boutique campgrounds or boutique spas, boutique motels, and so yeah, I'm a big fan of taking something you've done in one area and then saying like, well, how could we do it over in that area?
Yeah. Well, and I love that because if you're asking people to come along with you, which certainly you are, whether it's your employees, the clients that you serve, or customers, if you can give them some anchoring or vision, that they'll know. I wrote a book 20 plus years ago, when I suffered a cardiac arrest when I had young kids. And I wrote a book about being a mom and going through an illness. And when I was pitching agents, I said, well, it's kind of like What to Expect When You're Expecting, which everybody knew about at the time. That was a book you got if you were pregnant, for moms that are sick. Like what to expect if you're a mom
about
that's
cereal
sick.
at night, or was it cereal for dinner?
Yeah, the Cereal for Dinner is the name of the book. Yeah, which was the idea that like it doesn't really matter what you put on the table, and you need to kind of prioritize things differently. And but that was exactly it. If I gave somebody something to kind of hang their thought on, for a suspension of a moment of imagination, then they could swing with me over to the new idea. Yeah. And that could be really valuable right now when we're trying to think about like, how are we going to kind of get out of some of the messes that we're in and solve some of these problems that, before we just called them hard to solve. Now they seem like, they're bigger than ever and harder to solve than ever, and innovative and imaginative thinking. I'd love to know what you think, Chip, about the correlation between play and imagination and innovation. How have you moved those around on your board?
For many of us, when we're really struggling with something, we and not everybody, but many of us, we sort of double down on our brain. It's like, okay, I gotta solve this puzzle, and you solve the puzzle by using your brain harder, and that doesn't usually work, because it means you get more intensely focused on something, and sometimes you need to open the aperture. And what I mean by open the aperture, it's like, with a camera, you open the aperture, you can see more, and you can see the blind spots. And so the beautiful thing about play and imagination is it takes you from the left brain to the right brain. And it allows you to start looking more holistically across the whole brain for solutions. And that can lead to some conceptual blockbusting, such that there's a way you've looked at it and you need to reframe it in a new way and say like, oh, I never looked at it that way. So, it's I think frankly, it's part of the reason why all those Silicon Valley folks end up at Burning Man every year, because, and it's not just the psychedelics they're doing, that's part of it, but it's like the mind-blowing experience of seeing art everywhere. And I was the first board member of Burning Man, so I have a little bit of experience here. And I get that, like, helping you to get out of the box you have created for yourself in terms of perception And play is a natural pathway to doing that, partly because it forces you to get out of your brain, and to exercise other parts of yourself.
We've talked before on other episodes, I've talked with folks about authenticity and play in a leader.
Mhm.
What's been your experience about, sort of expecting people to, remember back in the 70s, the trust walk and the trust fall and these things, like if you're going to take your team, either if it's in just your weekly meeting or away on a retreat, my firm Impactful does retreat facilitation. I'm always trying to figure out like, what's going to be the vibe? And is this a group that is used to feeling safe to kind of be playful and vulnerable together? Or is that the first piece of work we need to do before we start introducing activities where people might be a little bit vulnerable in a different way?
No, you're sizing up the audience and what the fears are, and making sure that whoever's most senior, the most senior leadership, are bought into some of the quirkiness that you might have planned. Meaning, if you're the experienced designer, or you're the head of HR, or somebody, or you're head of whatever, and you're supposed to put on this retreat, and you want everybody to get vulnerable, but the CEO is just not going to do it. You got to figure that out. You got to figure that out before you get there. Whether that's convincing the CEO to get vulnerable, or having the CEO have his or her fingerprints on a creative way to do that is comfortable to that person. So it's really, that's pretty essential, because actually when you can see the most senior leaders going through it, then actually it gives such a carte blanche for everybody else to do the same.
One of the things I've thought about and heard about in these 200 plus episodes is this relationship between trust and play. And play can build trust, but it also kind of is an antecedent. You kind of sort of need trust first to play. So it's kind of got a reciprocal relationship with each other. I was talking to one really great guest who's a futurist, and she was doing some work with folks in Oklahoma who were ancestors of those who had suffered in the Black Wall Street massacre and were due reparations. And they were going in to have a conversation about, should this money come, what to do with it. And I mean, that sounds like a great conversation. People would, but the pain and history of that, and even though she was well studied in it, she came and she said she gave herself 2 weeks with them before she introduced the first game, just so that they would have established the rapport needed, then go into that work.
I think, and I think another thing that has to be sort of sorted through is, especially in the social justice world, is how much latitude do we give for irreverence? And I want to be really honest here, having been on the board of many social justice organizations. I have a quirky 14-year-old boy sense of humor occasionally. Good news is I've never gotten sued or had any major harassment. I've never had any harassment issues at all. But does my sense of humor sometimes get a little off color? I'm not talking about body parts or anything like that, but just sort of like a weird sense of humor. Is that okay? And that I think, I've never done this, but as I'm saying this, if I was to go into a board meeting where I felt like it's a pretty buttoned up board, but buttoned up not because they're conservative, but buttoned up because there's a fear of alienating anybody or doing something that would be, I don't know, too irreverent. How do you create the ground rules for people to have an understanding of how to be quirky and rebellious a little bit? Because if actually people are saying, we want to solve problems and we want to, and we're going to go out and, be passionate about changing the world, but there's a sense that if you say the wrong thing, someone's going to shut you down and you're going to get canceled. That's a problem. And I say that as a, politically quite progressive person, but I can tell you that I've been in environments where I felt like, wow, I really need to be cautious about what I'm saying now, which the moment I do that, I shrink. And if I shrink, you don't get the best of me.
Yeah. Well, and I get it. Me too. And I think, the more we allow ourselves to kind of screw up together and screw up in front of each other, with each other,
Yeah.
the better we'll get at this. And certainly when you're bringing together a group of people with widely different lived experience, sort of understanding not everybody's going to get the joke or appreciate that humor and things like that. And understanding it, if you can kind of set some ground rules, that's okay. And then also for someone to say, like, people say that really hurt my feelings or that really upset me,
Yeah.
versus anybody retreating or, like you said, kind of then shrinking, but kind of everybody stay forward with both how they're coming at it and how it's making them feel.
Yeah, and how it makes them feel is actually, it's worthy to have that conversation, and to have the person who made the joke understand what it did to someone else. The key is that the
Yeah.
person who has been sort of hurt by that, how can they be resilient enough as well to be able to see, like, okay, we are living in an era right now where some of the traditional kinds of things we were used to during the last 10 years are not available to us, in the sense that doing anything that's perceived as woke is actually almost forbidden in some organizations these days. And that's ridiculous, because being woke is a great thing. I want to be
Yes, agreed.
I want to be awoke.
My,
I want to be I don't want to be asleep. I want to be awakened. But
totally.
I
That's
also
what the Pope said. Do you remember he wrote that
yeah,
piece about being woke?
yeah.
The
I think,
Pope.
how can you do that and have a sense of humor? That's the key.
Yeah.
The person who, again, I talked about juxtapositions of, like, curious and wise. How can you be
Yeah.
woke and have a sense of humor? And there's some people
Yeah.
out there who do it, and I don't want to use specific names, but they're like late night comics who can actually find the right balance being there. And they're going to occasionally offend someone, but it's that combination, because the word humor also is, the root of that word is human and
Mm.
humility. And so humor actually has a beautiful part to play in creativity and problem solving, and actually, frankly, enjoying each other's company. And when we
Yes.
feel like we can't be humorous because of wokeness, then we have, I think, in my opinion, lost track of what wokeness means.
This could not just be an episode. This could be a
Yeah,
podcast, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'll tell you my Peloton username, or my screen name on Peloton is Woke Granny, because I'm both a grandmother and I'm woke. So that fits into what we're talking about. Let's, if you would, go grab your ice cream
I'm going to grab my ice
and
cream.
come on back.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'll tell folks who are new to the podcast and those who are not, a reminder, the PlayFull Podcast, we have an ice cream sponsor. It's Taharka Brothers, TAHARKA, taharkabrothers.com. They are a social enterprise, employee-owned ice cream company based in Baltimore. Social enterprise means double bottom line. They're making amazing ice cream, and a business, it's not a nonprofit, a business that is making and selling that ice cream. And then they have a social justice mission where profits go to the community. Okay. And Chip, tell about the ice cream arriving.
So I got a lot of ice cream, and I like more than I could ever use, but I have banana pudding right here. So yeah. So how do you deliver ice cream? And this takes creativity, and you do it to Santa Fe, New Mexico in the summer, which is like everything melts here during the
Yes.
summer. So yeah, I got it, and it was, some nice dry ice. And should I start eating it?
Yes, let's do it. Okay, and so you have banana pudding, which I think has like vanilla wafer pieces in it, like a old
Oh,
banana
really?
pie would have from back in the day. I have mint flicks and chills, peppermint ice cream with
Mm.
homemade peppermint patties and chocolate cookie swirl.
Oh my God, this takes me
So
back.
good, right?
Yeah, like
Does it?
what do you call it? Like vanilla wafers, vanilla wafers.
Yeah, yeah. I
Mm.
think yeah, that was like and this is very much of the decade, but this was like, if you would go to like a potluck kind of
Mm.
thing, and your mom might make the
Mm.
banana pie with the vanilla wafers. This is both
Oh,
stereotyped and gender
I was,
norms and all of that.
yeah. The vanilla wafers would be the crust, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
potentially, or in the ice
Mm-hmm.
cream. Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Mm.
And something about Target Brothers that they're able to do is the mix-ins stay crunchy,
Mhm.
Like if you had the honey graham one yet, there's like
I
graham
did.
cracker swirls.
Oh,
Oh,
wait, I
right?
got to tell you about my honey graham.
Oh,
You
good,
will love
do.
this. So that's so funny you mentioned honey graham because I have like I don't know, 12 different flavors. The only other one I've opened up is the honey graham, and they're famous for that. So I had a pool party. So we had, and when you're here, your group will do this. At my home here on the ranch, there's a nice swimming pool. And so we have like, in between workshop sessions, we bring people up after lunch and we have a little pool party. So everybody was out in the pool in the hot weather, and I brought out the honey graham with four spoons in it, and there were about 10 or 12 of us in the pool. And so we were sharing each other's spoons, but we were eating a honey graham
In the
ice
pool.
cream in the pool.
Oh
Play.
my God. I
Hmm.
cannot, we totally playful. I can't wait to tell my friends over at Tarka about that. Hey, when we're eating ice cream, one of the things we do is I ask the question, what's the scoop on how you came to care? Which is to say, like impact origin story. Like where do you remember an early time in your life where you realized kind of the world was bigger than you and you maybe you wanted to have a role in making it different and better?
Well, I went to high school. I'm a white guy. I happen to be gay, but when I was in high school, I presented as straight. I was an all-American water polo player and student body president, and etc. Had a girlfriend. Um, but I always understood the other. I mean, I could understand the other partly because I was
Mm,
gay. And I was a white guy going to a predominantly black high school, public high school. And that experience, and Dianca Patrick being one of my best friends, and in seventh grade, she was smarter than me, but by the time she was in 12th grade, she was pregnant and she wasn't going to
mm,
college. And the whole premise of um, how do we help people who have been in some ways underrepresented, disadvantaged, whatever you want to call it, um, and give them a leg up was right there in my face in high school.
mm,
And I love that. I wasn't bused there. It turns out, my home was in the district that was the most racially diverse. I grew up in Long Beach, California, and there were 5 public high schools, and I went to Long Beach Poly High School because my home was in that district, which is a very interracial district, the Poly High School district. So that's where the caring came from.
yeah. That's reminding me of a story. The first nonprofit organization I ever worked for, I was a little baby grant writer in 1993. I had been a journalist initially, and I realized I cared too much about what I wanted to write about to do it objectively, and so I thought, well, I can't be a journalist anymore. So I took my writing skill into the sector and started as a grant writer. And I was working for a nonprofit organization I'm actually on the board of now called Students Run LA, and they train kids from Title I schools in Los Angeles County to run the LA Marathon. And
Yeah.
70,000 kids have been through the program in the last 30 plus years. And so I was gathering stories for a grant, and I was talking to this 15-year-old girl who was in the program, and she said, I can't get pregnant before the marathon. And this was
No,
during
oh
the school
no,
year.
oh
And
God.
no, but not oh no, but oh great. Because
Well,
suddenly she had that agency
yes.
and it wasn't like a parent or a grown up lecturing her about safe sex or, teen
No, I
pregnancy.
know.
She was saying, I have something I want to do,
Well,
which
true,
is
true.
in March. And so then guess what? That just kept extrapolating,
Mm.
not till the end of school, not to college, and all and on and on. Similar with use of drugs and smoking and all of that. When the kid's getting picked up to go to the 10K on Saturday morning on a bus at 5 a.m.,
Mm.
the previous Friday night, if they go out, the next Saturday morning, they're like, oh, I'm not doing that again because I
Yeah,
want to feel
yeah,
good when I ride the bus. So like these providing opportunities for people to have the experience to make these choices for themselves because they want something and
yeah.
have an opportunity for something more.
I love that. I love that.
Tell me about play at MEA. So you mentioned the pool party. I think I remember my husband telling me something about bread and baking bread
Oh,
or
breaking
sourdough
bread.
or
Yeah, in Baja, there's a breaking
yeah.
bread ritual, and then you present it, and yeah, I mean, we
Hmm.
do all kinds of things, whether it's karaoke or improv, going surfing, going horseback riding. We have this in Santa Fe. We have this pond, and we have this. I was trying to build a hot tub there, like a commercial hot tub, and it was going to cost a ridiculous fortune. So I found this company called Spa Cruisy, and it's this little mini yacht. I mean, it's tiny, maybe 20 feet long, and 25 feet long, and it's a hot tub. So it's a hot tub that actually you drive around the pond, and so so we deeply believe that play and fun is part of what actually wakes us up to our second adulthood, and so that's a big part of what we do.
Chip, do you see folks actually or metaphorically, but maybe actually sort of standing on the sidelines at the wall, not coming in? What does it take for people to, when they get there, move from being like, this is uncomfortable, I've never done this before, to all in? And what's that like, and how long, what's typical? And what's your experience with that?
Well, a couple things. On the very first night, we do an exercise called "If You Really Knew Me," and it's an exercise in, having people really speak from what we call the third vault. I won't go into the details here, other than to say that people end up saying things on that very first night that they have not even told their spouse or their best friend or their sister or whomever, and so we help to break the ice in a way. And obviously we do something quite special that gets us there. And then the next morning, after doing some mindfulness activity in the morning, after breakfast, we go into, right before we go into circle, the wisdom circle, which is an opportunity again to go deep with each other. We start dancing, and we have a dance party. Now, no one's expecting this, but literally 5 to 10 minutes before we start the circle activities, we start playing dance music, and we get everybody up and dance. And there are a lot of people, especially the men in the room, who just aren't comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But we don't care. You got to get up. You can get up and not move at all if that's what you would choose to do, but you have to not be sitting right now. And to be honest with you, it works. And people are surprised. In fact, there are so many people who say to me, after going to MEA, I've started like just doing a 10-minute dance party with myself in front of the mirror early in the morning. And it's like, yeah, exactly.
Brene Brown is famous, I think, in one of her speeches or, one of her TED Talks or books or something. She talks about dance parties with her family in the kitchen is just kind of a ritual that she instituted. Isn't it interesting that dancing, and this is probably very cultural, and I can only be speaking from probably a white woman's perspective of a certain age. To me, feels like one of the scariest things to do if it isn't like kind of at a big event where the lights are low and the music is loud. I would rather probably be more comfortable singing in front of people, because I think with singing, it's like, well, you kind of either have a good voice or you don't. You're kind of born with that or you're not. But like dancing, I should be able to have gotten better at this by now, right?
What you just said, Kristine, is exactly why we do it, because there's a lot of judgment in what you just said about yourself. And so that judgment is, affecting the boundaries of your mind and your activities. And how do we blow those boundaries up? By being less self-critical. And so, listen, frankly, I think dancing's is it better than singing? We do improv, we do karaoke. But dancing is something that everybody can do on some level.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or indifferent. You can do it. Singing, you can do it, but it's like, honestly, if someone's singing badly, it's actually negatively affecting other people. Whereas if you're dancing badly, unless you're doing it hurting people, it's not hurting you. Right. You're just making a fool of yourself.
You're right. Wonderfully slow. You're being a kook. All right. I want to talk about 2 more things before we finish up. You've written 8 books or 7, and the 8th is coming out. Can you remind me, or the 8th just came out? I'm losing track, but you have written a lot of books.
8th and 9th. I'm working on the 9th. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So this could be a story. This week's episode is how to write a novel, and I had a great colleague on who wrote a novel that has a political mission or, political message, but not intentionally. Talk about your books. What's the through line, and what can we expect from the one that's coming out?
Yeah. The through line is, it's sort of like entrepreneurship or leadership meets spirituality, in some of them, meets creativity. And then more recently, the books have been more a little bit, and there's a psychology component to them. The books have been more about midlife. The book that I'm working on two books right now. One that I'm delivering to my publisher at the end of this year, which is then it'll be another year before it comes out. That's called Q3, and that's about midlife or the
Great.
third quarter of life. And
Yeah.
but the book I'm working on right now, which I'm going to self-publish and have out by year end, is called The Art of the Reframe. The Art of the Reframe. And the premise is how, if you can see differently, you can live differently. And how do you actually see differently so you can reframe something? And it's what I'm having to do in my own life right now. I have a lot of stuff going on. Many of the things have been sort of bad news kind of stuff. And how do I see it differently? How do I look without having toxic positivity or a spiritual bypass, so to speak? But like, how do I own that this isn't going the way I wanted it to? And how do I see it differently? And yeah, I think it's a pretty important book, and it's not specific to midlife. It's, you can do it at any time, at any age.
Yeah. I a phrase I've started to a thought I've had, and then a phrasing I've given to it, which is to try and with this framing idea is no victim, no hero. Can I be neither the victim nor the hero in this story? Kind of just like if I can be kind of right down the fairway in the middle, like it's not happening to me and I'm not the savior of this. I'm just like anybody else having this life experience, and I want to try and be as open to the lessons that are meant for me through it. Think of like all the things come me as wrapped up, like just for me to have that experience. And that takes a lot of effort to keep remembering that, but it's good to know that's a goal and a guide. Let's finish up by telling folks about the workshop. I'd love to do that. September 10th to 13th.
Yep.
As I mentioned at the outset, JD Schramm and I, you can also go on the PlayFull Podcast episode library and find his episode, which is about how to tell a story. So he and I are going to bring together this mashup of storytelling and play, all about, unearthing, refining, improving both your narrative that you are telling yourself and your narrative you're sharing out in the world, so that you can more fully embrace this Q3, this next part, this phase of your life that you're in, with a kind of lessons, like you said, Chip. All this is kind of for everybody of any age, and especially poignant as you're in these middle to later decades.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's beautiful about this is that it's MEA is built for this already, and you're just going to take it to a higher level. So it's probably, at MEA, we've probably done 400, 500 workshops at this point. Yours is going to be the most fun workshop we've ever had. So I say that, and you guys, you got to come. You got to come.
Oh, man. Thanks, Chip. What an endorsement. Yeah, folks, there's going to be everything from impact haiku to superhero capes to finger puppets to, of course, ice cream. And now that I know we'll figure out how to have ice cream in the pool, if nobody minds that, well, we're gonna bring it out. Taharka Brothers is going to actually share ice cream with us. We're going to ship it to Santa Fe during the week that we're having our session. So, Chip, thank you so much. Any call to action for the social justice folks listening to this podcast?
Yeah, we have a lot of interfaith leaders who come to MEA private retreats we do, and it's a marathon, not a sprint, and just whatever it takes to be able to do the marathon, whether that's humor or sleep, or self-care or other care, literally being with other people where you're caring for each other. I have two friends, and they're both in they're social justice nonprofit organizations, and they care for each other. They they both say, we give each other neck and shoulder massages. And it's oh yeah, they don't make a lot of money, And so they give each other massages. So that it's sometimes when we think of self-care, it sounds a little bit selfish, but self-care can have other care built into it, and there's a social wellness piece to that as well.
Love that. Yeah. Yeah. Thinking of others. One last little story. I was just in Washington, D.C. doing some lobbying with the ACLU on the Hill. And I went to the Library of Congress on a tour, and I hadn't done that before, which I highly recommend, especially for book people, man. Chip, it is. You can go visit your books at the Library of Congress.
Yeah.
But they have the Declaration of Independence, and they have, of course, all these, and then they have copies of them that you can buy as souvenirs. And I sent some to some of the people that I know that I've been talking to about the country and the state of things and how we can build upon this. It says in the documents, more perfect union. It didn't say perfect. So every day is towards this more perfect. And when you're talking about care and care for others, sending someone a postcard, thinking of them when you're on a trip, and sending them a memento or a souvenir is a way to kind of keep knitting, our networks and keeping them strong wherever we are. So I'm just grateful to know you. I'm grateful to be able to be part of MEA, and thank you for your time and all the work you do and you're going to be doing and all the ways you're sharing yourself with the world.
Well, I'm honored to be here, and we're just thrilled to have you in Santa Fe in early September.
Fantastic. All right. We will keep having fun, bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world. Thanks, Chip.
Thank you, Kristine.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to the PlayFull Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know of a leader or organization that's doing good in the world and you'd love to help us help them amplify their message, I would love to have them on the show. Go to the show notes and click there, or go to impactfulinc.com/contact. And that's impactful with 2 L's, inc.com/contact. And let us know who you're thinking about. Can't wait to see you next time.